All right, this is John. Today I'm working on a customer's 1971 Jeepster Commando here. It's got the Buick 225 and we're doing the Weber carburetor install. So I just want to give you a couple pointers if you're installing this carburetor. There's a couple things directions weren't that clear about, and then this is not a direct bolt-on, so there's a few things you're going to have to do. One thing to make sure that on this plate here that you point that nozzle forward. That's in case you got power brakes. That's the vacuum source. Went ahead and plug this one off because we don't have power brakes on this, but make sure that points forward. Otherwise you'll be taking this thing back off and reversing that because it won't clear the linkage in the back. What I did here, this is original linkage here. Now on the original one, this piece for the throttle cable there normally faces forward, so what I did was cut it off and then moved it to the side here and welded it, because as you can see, throttle linkage connects on the back on these Weber carburetors. I was able to reuse the same location for the bracket. I just had to move this piece here. So if you don't have a welder, you could just move this piece and drill a hole right through there and bolt it. I prefer to weld those. Second thing, I would also recommend getting a new throttle cable. Chances are your old one is probably about done for anyways. They're pretty bad about fraying right here on the end by the gas pedal. They're real bad about doing that. So I would go ahead and replace that. Plus, I find that a lot of these cables are kind of sticking anyways. If you go to install this carburetor, you're going to have problems with it. Now, when you get the new one, the new cable, which I'm sure this thing's made in China, this end right here does not seem to fit very well on the end of this stud right here that comes with the carburetor. It's supposed to be 1/4 inch, but I've done this a few times and they never want to fit correctly. So get yourself a 1/4 inch drill bit and just go ahead and drill this a little bit. You'll see some small shavings come out of it because it's not quite a 1/4 inch like it's supposed to be. And if you do that and put a little grease on the end of the stud there, should fit good, because you don't want, whenever you depress this, you don't want this sticking, basically. It should rotate freely on the end of that ball stud. For those of you that got the automatic, I don't know if you can see it, but the kick down, what I did was I just made a bracket and welded it to this original bracket here and lined everything up for the kick down. So when you fully depress this fuel, it then depresses the switch for your kick down. I don't know if you can see it right in there, but if you line everything up correctly and make yourself a bracket there, your kick down will work correctly. If you have a manual, you don't have to worry about that. You can also use Lockhart. We sell those kits. You could use a Lockhart kit. This carburetor comes with a bracket to put a switch there, but I found that it's kind of easier to just use the original one. Now this here, I probably should have moved that a little bit further forward to get this perfectly in line, but that works where it's at, and I've cycled the linkage back and forth. Seems to work great. On these Weber carburetors, you do have to run a fuel pressure regulator. I think it's supposed to be no more than, I think it's supposed to be 3 to 5 psi. They do send you some hose as well to hook up. And that's pretty much it. And then the only other thing you want to make sure you do, these gotta have an electric choke on them, so you don't want to run a constant 12 volt to it. So I've got it, so when you key the ignition on this side, that's your resistor, so make sure you put it on this side here on the passenger side. With key on, should have 12 volts, and then that'll work your electric choke. I did go ahead and install a spring back here. You can't really see it, just so that pedal goes back to the idle location pretty freely. So that's pretty much the pointers I have for installing this carburetor. I put this one right on, put a little bit of fuel in it, fired it up, and it fired right up. And this one doesn't even seem to need any adjustments. So good carburetor, better technology than the older, Rochester 2Cs you have, and he's got like a 2-speed circuit basically that they work off. So if you got any more questions, just give us a call.